If you've heard about the flop shot around the green and you want to learn how to play that, or if you just need to have a shot in your bag that maybe goes a little bit higher and comes down a little bit steeper with a smaller amount of space, then this video here is going to help you, hopefully help you teach you how to play that shot. So the first thing I would say when playing the shot is find your ball around the green, and wherever the ball, check the lie of the ball. So if the ball is, say there's a bunch of grass here, and then this ball is sitting way down in here, and you can barely see it, and there's just a ton of grass and stuff around it. This type of shot is not going to be a candidate for a flop shot to be able to hit it. You need it to be up in the rough a little bit so that you can get the club underneath there and pop it up. You need a little bit of space there. Or you can also hit it from a fairway lie, like a really tight lie like this. So that would be the first thing I would say, is just to check the lie of the ball in the grass or whatever it is in there, to know whether or not you're gonna it's conducive to being able to hit this shot. So that's the first thing I would say. Next, is the wedge selection. So typically people will think of like playing a flop shot with their highest lofted club. With the Sterling irons, we have a 60-degree lob wedge. So most people will think like, oh, let me go to the lob wedge. That's the club I'm going to hit it with. But that may not be the best wedge for the flop shot, depending on the condition. So if, I'll give you a couple situations here. So if the ball is sitting down a little bit in the rough and you need to get into some grass here, but you don't want it to dig into the grass and get stuck in the grass, you need it to come through a little bit, then the sand wedge is probably going to be a little bit better, because there's a couple important parts to the wedge here. So this first part, as you come down the club face here to the pointy part, this is the leading edge or digger, digger. And then as you come around to the bottom, there's a curvy part here called the bounce or the skipper. So how those two come into play here with this type of shot is, if you have the club square or have some shaft lean or something, then this leading edge can really dig into the ground. And then if you open the club face a little bit, then this bounce is exposed and it's going to keep the club from digging in a little bit. So in the situation we have here, where we want to hit a flop shot and we're in some thick rough here, and there's some grass in the way, you probably want to pick the sand wedge, because with the Sterling irons, the sand wedge is the one that has the most bounce on it. It has the most amount of this stuff on it. And that's pretty well going to be the same with most wedges. Also, the sand wedge is probably going to be the one with the most bounce, and you need that here because you're probably going to want to open up the club face here so that when you go down into the rough and get it, it doesn't grab and just hold and slow down the club face before it gets to the ball. This bounce kind of keeps it from grabbing and lets you get through the rough with that open club face to be able to hit it. So that's a situation where you'd want to pick, say, a sand wedge for a flop shot. A situation where you might want to take the lob wedge is more if you have the tight lie situation. So if you have the tight lie like this, where there's not a lot of room there, then you, when you open the club face here, you want, let me back up and say this, I'll rephrase this a little bit. From a tight lie, it takes a certain type of wedge grind. So the grind means like how this sole and bounce here is like literally grinded down. So in the case, so in the case of our sand wedge and lob wedge here with our Sterling irons, what we did was we gave this a 0 bounce heel grind. So when you open up the club face here, there's almost literally like no bounce on this heel part here. So when you open it up, the club still will sit down and you can get under it. So when we're talking about here the tight lie flop shot, you need a wedge like in both of our Sterling irons and our Sterling irons sand wedge and Sterling irons lob wedge have this 0 bounce grind on the heel here. And other wedge manufacturers, a lot of them will have different grinds as well. So get one that has some of the bounce shaved off here on the heel, and so that'll allow you, when you open the club face, it lets the club sit down a little bit, so you can add loft. So when you have the club normal here, it's like this much loft, and then when you open it, it gets it more loft. But when you, with this 0 bounce grind here, it's gonna still sit down, so that when you're talking about a tight lie here, you can still hit a flop shot and get under it without now if you didn't have that 0 bounce heel grind, and that bounce was there, then the club would sit up more like this, and then the bounce would hit off the ground, and it would just raise the club face here too high to be able to get under it. So without a certain type of wedge grind or design built into the club, a flop shot basically, I was going to say won't work. It probably won't work with some clubs from a tight lie. So you need a certain type of wedge to be able to do that. So with the Sterling irons, you're all taken care of there with the sand wedge and lob wedge, so you can play that shot. So the next thing is, I mentioned that you want to open the club face to hit the flop shot, because this here, I have a sand wedge, I have it bent from 55 to 57, so you got 57 degrees of loft there. So, oh sorry, actually this is the lob wedge. So this is 60, this one here. And so we have 60 degrees of loft here, and if we want to hit it higher, hit this flop shot, then you open the club face, and it makes the loft go higher. So wherever the club face is pointed at impact, this is an important thing to understand about golf. Wherever the club face is pointed at impact is primarily where the ball is going to start. So if you want to hit it higher, you have to open the club face to hit it higher. However, what you have to keep in mind is the lie angle. So when you're hitting here like this and you're coming through, then if your club is upright, the club face points left. If it's flat, the club face points to the right. So similarly, when you open the club face, let's see, when I open the club face here, oh, it points out to the right. Sorry, I had to get my spacing right there. So when you open the club face, the club actually points out to the right. So you have to, on this shot, you have to either squat down a little bit or do something to basically lower, open the club face points to the right there, and then you have to lower the handle by either lowering yourself or just squatting down a little bit so that that club face is pointed right where you're at your target, where you want it to go. So mind the where the face is pointed when you open the club face, and the more you, so there it's square, and the more you open it up, the more it points to the right. So you just kind of have to eyeball it and visualize where this face is pointing, because you're not going to have this little stick on here when you're hitting this shot. So the more you open up, the more you have to lean the shaft down to get it to be straight again. And that can look a little funny when you're how can I do this so you can see it here? When you look down at the club face here, it can look like it's square when you set up normally. And then when you open the club face, it looks, with all the groove lines here and the leading edge here, it looks like it's pointing way out here. So that can be a little bit confusing to your mind and brain at first when you're first see this, because then you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm a right-hander here and I open up the club face and it just looks like it's going to go way right. But that's where you got to keep in mind that it doesn't matter so much the leading edge or these score lines or where it looks like in that regard where the club face is pointing. It's more this lie angle here. So open the club face and then lower yourself, lower the handle so that it gets to a point where it's straight. And you just got to keep that in mind and just kind of eyeball it. I don't really, there's no other way to do it other than that. You just kind of see like, okay, it looks a little left here, looks a little right here. Okay, that looks about right. I got to squat down a little bit, maybe lean up a little bit. Okay, right there, that's, the face is open. It looks like it's pointing to the right, but the actual important part, the club face, looks like it's pointed to where I want to hit it. So now I can swing. And so now, with the swing here, the tip I would have here for you with that is to swing smooth and just swing smooth. Swing smooth. And why that's important is because when you open the club face here like this, so normally you have this much club face to deal with. When you open it, all of a sudden, like, you know, there's a lot less space to be able to hit the ball. So you have to be really, really precise with the strike when you're hitting this shot. So it's super, super important to hit these shots smoothly. You can take a long swing, but just be super smooth. And I'll go back to this, I'll bring up this tetherball analogy again that I've used on the channel here. So with a tetherball, the ball's coming around the same point of space every time, but if you put a little bit of tension in that swing, then the ball's is going to disrupt the flow of that, and it's not going to come around at the same point in space. So you got to be super smooth when you're swinging, and not slow or not guidey or not deliberate, but just be smooth. And you can swing a little fast at it or make a longer swing with it, but just make sure that you're really, really smooth. And then generally I would say to not, and try and keep your head fairly still. So it doesn't have to be perfectly still, but you know, if you're trying to hit a flop shot and you're like going like this while you're swinging, it's going to be really hard to get the precision needed to get that strike consistently on the ball. So just generally pretty stable. Try not to move your head around too much until once you've hit the ball. Then of course, then you can move and come up out of it and look. But general head still, swing smooth, and that should hopefully be able to help you hit the flop shot better. So hit the flop shot. So those are the things I would say for as far as hitting the flop shot. To recap here, check the lie, make sure it's the type of lie where you can hit a flop shot. And then once you determine that it is, then pick out the right wedge for it. Pick out either a sand wedge or a lob wedge. You can even hit a flop shot if you want with a gap wedge or pitching wedge or 9-iron or any other iron if it's got the right design on it. Once you pick out the right wedge for the shot at hand, then open the club face. And then when you open the club face, the more you open it, the more you need to lower yourself, lower the handle, so that club face is pointing. It doesn't matter so much when you're setting up, but as long as you're getting back to that point, I think it helps to set up there so that you know, like, okay, this is where I got to come back. Not necessary, but I think it helps. So open the club face, mind the lie angle, keep your head pretty still, and then just swing really smooth with it, because you got to be super, super precise with that strike. And generally, I would say because of that, it's a high risk shot. So use it accordingly, I guess, or use it with caution. So know that there's a chance that it's a high risk shot. So just be aware of that, and don't use it, I guess, unless you're willing to take the risk that comes with that. So that's what I'd say about hitting flop shots around the green. Give those things a try, put them into practice, and hopefully you'll be hitting some amazing flop shot moon balls around the green.